I would like to do something completely different for this channel. I want to tell you a story, a very real, intriguing story, a story of murder and mystery, a story of how people let their hope and belief in the fantastic lead them straight into the lion's den. It was a perfect storm of events that gifted an opportunistic predator with ample opportunity. So this story involves the tales of a previously unknown, undiscovered city. A city of riches hidden deep within the Amazon jungle. Now that is enough to catch the attention of any prospective author, but especially a prospective author with an unquenchable thirst for the unknown, especially one with aspirations of capitalizing off the fervor surrounding the recent publication of books by Eric von Daniken. I'm talking about a man by the name of Karl Brugger. Karl Brugger was a journalist residing in Brazil, who would subsequently become the author of a book called The Chronicles of Akakor. The Chronicles of Akakor were published in 1977, following Brugger's 1972 meeting with a mysterious figure by the name of Tatunca Nara. The meeting was arranged by mutual friends who believed that Karl Brugger absolutely had to hear the astounding, incredible story that Nara had to tell. Of course, several interviews followed, along with Brugger's untimely death. In these interviews, Tatunca Nara told stories of a hidden city and its people deep within the forests of the Amazon. He proclaimed that he and his people, the people of Akakor, had been chosen by the gods some 15,000 years ago. Tatunca claimed that all of this was recorded in the holy book of his people, which began at year 0, the year the gods left his people. Tatunca states that prior to the year 0, men lived like animals, without laws, without tilling the soil, without clothing themselves, and the great masters brought the light. Now, if you are aware of the ancient alien theory, this may be sounding pretty familiar to you. Essentially, Tatunca would go on to detail the story of aliens bringing the gifts of civilization to animalistic humans. As with other claims of ancient extraterrestrial intervention, some aspects of his overall story were credible, which only served to bolster Brugger's curiosity about the more fantastic elements of Nara's story, namely, that there was an entirely undiscovered city of people residing within the Amazon forest. Tatunca Nara claimed that 3,000 years before the year 0, glittering golden ships appeared in the sky, and the plains were lit by enormous blasts of fire. The earth shook and the sky thundered for miles. These alleged visitors taught man quite a bit, even divulging information about the Earth's cycles, warning man of cataclysmic upheavals of restarts every 6,000 years. Some of you may be familiar with a term, the precession of the equinoxes, but essentially this refers to the rotation of the heavens, a cycle which spans approximately 25,920 years, over which time the constellations appear to slowly rotate around the Earth, taking turns rising behind the sun on the vernal equinox. A new sign appears on the horizon every 2,160 years. Ancient man, throughout many cultures, proposed the theory of different Earth or life cycles based on the precession of the equinox, complete with the dawning of new life and the cataclysmic wiping of the slate. I only mention this to indicate just one piece of Tatunca Nara's story that does seem believable or credible. And it does seem believable based on what we know about ancient cultures and their beliefs in regards to time. Think Mayan long count calendar, or in India, the ancient Vedic cultures had astrologer priests known as rishis who developed precise formulas for calculating the cosmic cycles. They wove these celestial equations into the fabric of their myths and legends. Chief among these cosmological beliefs is the line of 10 avatars. According to these beliefs, Vishnu takes birth at particular points in the cycle which correspond to the Earth's passage through the fixed zodiacal ages. Vishnu appears every 6,480 years. Tatunca told the story of his people having attacked a settlement on the Santa Maria River, killing all the men and taking 4 women captive. He claimed that of these 4 women, only one survived. She was a German missionary named Raina. She was taken to the hidden city of Akakor, where she was made the bride of the prince, and together they parented, or bore, Tatunca Nara, the Prince of Akakor. Raina allegedly returned to Germany 4 years after Tatunca's birth as an ambassador to the Third Reich. She returned to Akakor with 3 German leaders, and an alliance was made between Germany and Akakor. Again, I want to point out that the Third Reich actually made trips to Nepal in search for Agartha, a mythical paradise of the inner earth, so this too seems plausible, but still fantastic. Now this is where it gets strange, if it wasn't already strange. In 1968, a plane crashed near Akakor, and Tatunca Nara helped save the survivors. He led them out of the jungle to the city of Manaus. The 12 survivors of the plane crash were, in fact, officers of the Brazilian government. Tatunca goes on to detail that with the help of the aging Germans, the above-ground city of Akakor was destroyed so not to be seen from the sky. He then states that all that remains of the city of Akakor is an underground city. Karl Brugger, being a journalist, didn't believe Tatunca Nara until pieces of his story were verified by Brugger's friend, a man in the Brazilian Secret Service. Tatunca had definitely saved the lives of 12 Brazilian officers whose plane crashed in the province of Akakor. Moreover, 2 known tribes of indigenous people revered Tatunca Nara as a chieftain. Brugger verified these facts were documented in the archives of the Brazilian Secret Service. With the help of the 12 rescued officials, Tatunca Nara was granted a labor permit and identity card. Witnesses say he spoke broken German, a number of Indian languages, and Portuguese. Brugger was also able to confirm fighting did indeed break out in the Peruvian province of Madre de Dios. And the leader of the Indians was a man named Tatunca who fled to Brazil. Attempts were made to extradite Tatunca Nara back to Peru, but Brazil refused to cooperate, causing Peru to close their common border. Brugger also discovered that at one point, Tatunca contacted the German embassy claiming 2,000 Germans were in need of funding in the city of Akakor. He also contacted the Indian Protection Services with similar claims of indigenous peoples in the city needing assistance. The German embassy refused, but the IPS agreed to contact the tribe. While making preparations with the IPS for their trip to meet the citizens of Akakor, Tatunca Nara was arrested by local authorities in Acre province to be sent to Peru to stand trial for the uprising he had led. Shortly before extradition, his officer friends got him out of prison and had him brought back to Manaus. Brugger met Tatunca there again, and Tatunca suggested the two of them make a trip to the hidden city of Akakor. Unlike the scheduled trip with the IPS that never got started, Brugger and Tatunca left Manaus by river on September 25, 1972, accompanied by a Brazilian photographer. It was estimated that the trip through the Amazon to Akakor would take 6 weeks. As they came closer to reaching their destination, the pageantry began as Tatunca began preparing to reunite with his people. He painted red stripes on his face, yellow on his chest and legs, and tied back his long black hair with a yellow band decorated by symbols of his people. However, for the other 2 travelers, an air of unease had fallen over their canoe, and on October 13th, their canoe was capsized. They lost their provisions, and most of the camera equipment was destroyed. This became the excuse needed by Brugger and the photographer to quit the expedition. Turning back to Manaus, they gave up on their expedition allegedly just 10 days from reaching Akakor. Tatunca refused to give up, and the last they saw of him, he was diving into the river with a knife, a bow, and just a small quiver of arrows. The photographer and Brugger returned to Rio de Janeiro, where Brugger wrote his book, The Chronicles of Akakor. On January 1st, 1984, Brugger was shot to death outside of his apartment. A young street youth was arrested immediately on suspicion, but could not be positively ID'd by witnesses. No one knows for sure who killed Brugger or why. This would not be the only strange death or disappearance of a person associated with Tatunca Nara. An American man was lured into the jungle by promises of adventure and discovery. This man's name was John Reed. He disappeared in 1980. There were rumors of a tall white man living amongst a tribe of indigenous peoples, talks of a skeleton bleached by the sun in a hammock, lying neatly by the river. Most startling of all were the whispers of murder. John's sister recounts having had dreams in which his strained, terrified voice says, "It's not how I thought it would be." Before disappearing in the rainforest, John Reed hungered for a higher knowledge and had even written a book about UFO sightings. Due to his interest in UFOs, he became aware of the books of Childress and Brugger and came to believe in the ancient city of Akakor. Reed was last seen paddling upriver with Tatunca Nara, who returned from their trip, but John never did. Essentially, Tatunca Nara managed to accumulate a modicum of fame thanks to Brugger's book, which Tatunca turned into a side business of taking tourists into the Amazon. Few who went into the jungle with Nara believed in Akakor, but John Reed certainly did. John had the symbol of the hidden city Akakor tattooed over his heart. The symbol, the sun rising out of the water, came from Brugger's book, the very book that led him to Tatunca Nara. John left behind 4 letters, his dog tags, and his ticket back to the States. 2 others in search of the hidden city would disappear, last being seen heading into the jungle with Tatunca Nara as a guide. Herbert Vonner, a 24-year-old Swiss, was certainly a believer in search of Akakor, as well as Christine Hauser, a middle-aged woman who also disappeared searching for the city. Suspicions don't stop there. Apparently, authorities are also aware of 2 Austrian people from New Zealand who disappeared after having last been seen with their guide, Tatunca Nara. So who is this strange man allegedly from an unknown city, a civilization that had yet to contact the outside world? Who is he? According to authorities, Tatunca Nara is really Gunther Haack, a West German citizen born on October 5th, 1941 in Bavaria. An expert studied photos of Gunther from his early 20s and compared them to photos of Tatunca and has confirmed, verified, they are the same person. Police records show that Haack was a sailor on a West German freighter in 1966 when he jumped ship in Venezuela. Arrested, he claimed to be an Indian. A psychiatrist diagnosed him as a schizophrenic, and Haack was returned to West Germany where he was jailed for 3 months for failing to support his wife and 2 sons. 3 years later, Haack sailed to Brazil and again jumped ship, the West German police say. This time he disappeared and Tatunca Nara emerged. He married a Brazilian and they have 2 teenage children. Last year, Haack's ex-wife traveled to Barcelos from West Germany and identified Tatunca as her former husband. His whole story is crazy, insists Kurt Hartert, the detective heading the West German investigation. This man we are talking about, who is suspected of having killed 3 people, if not more, is Gunther Haack. There is no doubt about this. There is an ongoing battle between multiple authorities insofar as who has jurisdiction over the various crimes that Haack has committed. So much for the fantastic city of Akakor, right? Or did Tatunca Haack stumble upon ruins lost in the jungle? Or is it that kind of thinking that led John Reed and the others to Nara's trap in the first place?